Miss Pinky is on mute. She's gonna be right here though.
All
There
right,
it is.
hello, can y'all hear me?
We got you now.
I can't wait till they watch that playback. All right, hi everybody. This is a new episode of Mrs. Pinky Thoughts, and I'm your host, Mrs. Pinky. Thank you for joining me. And today's special guest, we have Shane T Hazel. How are you doing, sir?
Oh, I am fantastic. Like I said, I'm old and broken and everything else, but it just gives me more anger and fight, I guess, to go out there and take out on the masses, I guess.
Oh, that's awesome. Before we get into it, I just want to do some shameless plugs and ask you guys to please like and subscribe to my channel. Please come visit us over at consciousconservativemedia.net. We're growing conscious conservatism right now. We're going to do this thing big. If you like what you see and you hear good things from us, please don't forget to donate to my CashApp at the top of your screen right now at $MrsPinky85 or my PayPal. And all of my social media stuff is at the bottom. I'm going to move that stuff out of the way for right now, and it might pop up during the show. Thank you guys for joining us. How you doing tonight, sir? I know you said you was broken up a little bit. Aren't we all, especially us veterans?
Oh, man, I tell you what, getting old is not for pansies, and I tell you what, some of the joints tonight are definitely experiencing a little bit more pain than I'd usually like to have in my system. A little bit's not bad. This much is a little bit too much.
Oh man, yeah. So we're gonna just jump right into it. So you are running for the GA Georgia gubernatorial candidate spot of the Libertarian Party. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how that happened.
I guess the cliff notes would be appropriate here.
Yes.
So yeah, some of your audience may recall that I was in the U.S. Senate race this last time around, not the runoff, just the general election as a Libertarian against Ossoff and David Perdue. Before that, I had run as a Republican in the U.S. Georgia 7th District for House. I primaried a guy named Rob Woodall. I'm happy to say that both of those rhinos, Perdue and Woodall, are now retired rhinos and no longer out there giving you guys a bad name. At least it's the Democrat, right? Like it's Democrats and not me. But I come from a background. Was a Marine, grew up in Lawrenceville, Georgia, went to Brookwood High School, all that fun stuff. And after leaving the Marine Corps and during the Marine Corps, I kind of had a come to Jesus moment and found out a lot of what we are indoctrinated with by the state, which is, another, like I'll call it the murder cult. This combination of banks and the state and corporations in this really god awful, unholy alliance. But I became a constitutional expert. After that, I found the Anti-Federalists, and God bless them, because those guys were prophets. I wasn't a constitutionalist anymore. I was really more of a guy looking at states and at local government decentralization, nullification at every level possible. And it's really just kind of changed my entire perspective as to what we should be doing as human beings in terms of contracts and the way we interact with each other. It's got to be peace and liberty and consent and everything, and that's really the consistent principles that kind of have guided me to this point. And I guess obviously as running as a U.S. Senate candidate, I got to get a little spotlight after the general election, because they blacked us out during the entire process, from the polls and media and debates. And after it was all said and done, they all wanted to know who I was going to endorse, and I said not a damn one of them. And so I gave a chance to Perdue and Ossoff to come on my show, Radical, and pitch themselves to my audience, and the libertarians and the people who were disaffected Republicans and Democrats. And they both kind of scoffed at the idea, thought it was below them. And I guess they got what they got in the end of the day. They earned it, and that was it. So I took that and I parlayed it into what I will be doing in terms of seeking the Libertarian nomination for governor this next time around.
So you wasn't sour by having to go through all of that with the election, other than choosing to be the Libertarian candidate. You still want to give Georgians a chance to vote for you and put you in office after all of this headache you went through with the Republicans. You still gonna give Georgians a chance?
I'll tell you, I'm kind of like that rented mule. I can take a beating. It's no sweat off my back. And so, if people are mad about having somebody on a ticket, it screams to me like this is America, right? Like, there's this old meme out there that's got North Korea and it's got America, and in the first picture with North Korea it says, in North Korea they only have one choice for office, and in America you get at least two. That's what a free country does. And you're like, why isn't the ballot open for anybody that wants to put their name in for the office? And it's because the Republicans and Democrats, especially here in Georgia, control the entire system. And people have been talking about how the game has been fixed and everything else, especially in this last year with the new legislation that came out. But the problem is the game's always been rigged, especially here in Georgia. It's always been rigged for Democrats and Republicans. They really don't care who's in power as long as it's them. This talk of having a voice out there that's all about life, liberty, property, your rights, and really just what this country was supposed to have been founded on in terms of those ideas and principles. People scoff at that, and so I'm happy to be that one voice out there that says, there are still people out here that don't want to vote for Republicans and won't vote for Democrats, and we're going to give them another choice.
Awesome. Tell us a little bit about what happened, though. I mean, I know you're running for the Libertarian side, but what exactly about the Georgia Republicans per se? I mean, because you were with them at first. What was your breaking point? Like, what made you say, you know what, I'm not dealing with y'all no more? Because I personally have issues and histories dealing with my local Republican Party, and a lot of people who sit on the fence have that same issue with different county GOPs. Certain people we actually know who work in different counties around this state. So explain to us, what do you see as the problems within the Georgia Republican Party, and what was your breaking point?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, I came up as a Republican. I was over in Snellville back in the 80s and 90s, for God's sakes. It was, probably one of the quote unquote most Republican conservative areas in the entire state at that time. And so, I came up believing in the patriotism, the red, white, and blue, the pledge, the American flag, ran off to fight right after 9/11, got into special operations. And for some of my actions overseas, I was awarded medals with valor and everything else. And so to come home, to be a war vet, and to know the Constitution cold, to be able to cite the writings of the founders and the Constitution, and then point to our representative who was a 50% constitutional voter. Like, half the time he voted, which means half of the time, including he didn't. And I was like, man, this can't be. Like, this is not what I fought for. This is not what everybody else, that I knew fought for, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so I decided, if nobody else is going to do it, stop waiting for somebody to come out and fight and be that person. You got the resume, it cold. You can debate, this guy under the table. And at the end of the day, he's got a track record a mile long of where he has compromised, the Constitution, your rights, and all these other things. And so I did that. And I'll tell you, the hate, the resentment, the stabbing in the back from the local GOP and the district GOP over in Gwinnett County and in Forsyth County, and by the Georgia 7th not rep at the time. I'm trying to remember the GOP chair for the Georgia 7th at the time. They were all conspiring behind closed doors with Rob Woodall to make sure that he wasn't in debates. I got one debate out of the guy. We were supposed to have at least two, if not three, for Forsyth County, for Gwinnett County, and then for the Georgia 7th overall. And they backed out. They renegotiated without me being at the table at all. And then just the lies that go around in terms of besmirching, slinging mud and all those kind of things. I was just like, man, if this is what the GOP is, right down to the city council members, like, I'm done. Like, you guys, it was a lost cause at that point. It's not salvageable. I saw the machine, and I saw how it worked, and they will not open a door or entertain an outsider that's out there preaching these things. They're not interested.
Do you think it has something to do with them winning the way that they are, and they constantly keep on winning, and maybe this last loss is a wake-up call for them that maybe they can't keep winning doing stuff like this?
No, I don't think there's a fighting bone in most of their bodies. You get a little back talk from Rand Paul once in a while, Mike Lee in the Senate, and then on the the House side, you got Thomas Massey, maybe Biggs, and those are the guys with A averages that vote for the Constitution. So I'll at least give those guys, they're standing up, they're being vocal. They're not quite as vocal as I would like them to be, but the rest of the GOP, they've sold their souls. And that's the thing is, like, even when the GOP is in charge, they lose. Can I cuss on your show?
Oh, I don't give a damn.
Nope. Yeah. So
I don't care.
Like,
I mean, to
quote the great Pete Kunianis is like, even when Republicans are in power, they fucking lose. And so I hear, nothing from
on the right day too with that $1 trillion that just sold.
Yeah, it's bipartisan support. You've got so in 2009, Barack Obama comes into the executive, and the Republicans say, "What? Give us the House." So we give them the House, and then they say, "Give us the Senate." We gave them the Senate. Give us a presidency, and guess what they did? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. We had to sit there and watch them try to take down, a duly elected president for 4 fucking years, and these guys didn't do shit. Nobody went to jail. Nobody, there was nobody paid the price. There was a false, dossier out there that was created, and then they went through years of investigation. They found absolutely nothing punishable, but at the same time, the Republicans came back and did what to them? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I'll tell you right now, the idea that the House, the Senate, and the president didn't get rid of Obamacare, the fact that they went after things like bump stocks, that they reauthorized the NDAA, they reauthorized domestic spying and FISA. I'm telling you, like, this is the problem with Republicans. They're controlled opposition. And if people don't understand, and I'm not talking to the rank and file, average citizen that votes Republican because they can't stand Democrats. Like, I can't either, guys. But here's the deal is, if you're supporting people who are controlled opposition, at the end of the day, you're still going to get evil. And those, ballless, gutless wonders in the GOP are going to, at the end of the day, steal victory from the jaws of defeat. And it's like, all right, guys, like, this is how you govern when you are in power. You talk tough in the years where you're not in power, and then when you get power, you just sit there and you bend over and take it from the Democrats. And the fact that anybody can't see that and still votes for them or thinks that they're going to have a change of heart is absolutely delusional at this point. And I love my Republican brothers and sisters to death. But for God's sakes, have a backbone, grow a spine, and say no more. When are you going to start fighting? When are you going to wake up? Because right now, the world is going through a communist revolution, and nobody's acting like it.
I was just letting you go because I was just listening.
I'll keep going.
I've said on this channel already, and I done wrote in a couple of articles. You haven't said anything that I haven't said. We're just going about how to solve it and how to do something about it a different way. That's the only thing I see the difference between us conscious conservatives and the libertarians. And actually, some of the conscious conservatives, like I say, Olivia Rondow, she's a libertarian, and we work with Masha Ray, and he's definitely always telling us to walk away. And Eric July,
he might be our VP. You know that, right?
Huh?
He might be our VP.
I heard. I know. I was like,
I'll tell you what, Dave Smith and.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate. I did this with Nina a little bit, and I asked her about you. So then I was going to ask you about her because she's in Georgia too, and I play a little devil's advocate because I feel like I'm one of the people you're talking to, and I struggle with this so hard because I'm like, damn, the libertarians sound how I sound. But then when I interviewed Georgia Republican Shaw Blackman talking about the voter law, everything he said sounded the way it should sound. Or it sounded, the right way. But I'm like, how can libertarians break this cycle? And that's why a lot of us Republicans, since y'all can't get a foothold in and y'all are infighting a little bit, how are we supposed to change things? I dropped Olivia because there was a libertarian candidate that came around and said, how can you join the Mises Caucus? The Mises Caucus is full of da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, hold up. I thought all y'all was the better version of the Republican Party. Now you're telling me some bigots and some xenophobes got into y'all too? How'd that happen? So you got to tell me details of what happened with the libertarians and what's going on with y'all. Because I'm like, hold up. I'm going to leave the Republican mess for that mess, or what's going on with y'all?
It's all a mess, right? And that's and so I think on a couple different fronts, let's approach the question. I will tell you, the Libertarian Party just had kind of its own little revolution inside of itself, right? We had a big stink up in New Hampshire. The duly elected party in New Hampshire was taken over by the Mises Caucus. They actually worked with the chair, who was not Mises Caucus. They said, hey, you know what? We kind of like you. You can be chair. We're cool with that. And that's the way the Mises Caucus is. It's like, hey, you got principle. Great. Don't hurt people. Don't take their stuff. Those are our rules. I mean, we're cran eaters. And I'm telling you, like, to keep it as simple as possible, that's how we are. And so anyway, there was kind of this conspiracy to remove the rest of the party in New Hampshire, not only by the chair after she was elected, but some other people who were noted in everything else, not none of the above, right? Like, it's a kind of a libertarian thing. But at any rate, this goes all the way to national, and we ended up having this conspiracy blow up in their face. And Joe Bishop Henchman, the LNC chair, the Libertarian National Committee chair, resigned. He had to leave because they were going to do an investigation. And if they would have found out there was criminality involved, they took all the electronic data, they took the accounts, they took everything from the duly elected party, and it was a big stink. But we're stronger now. And that's because we got rid of some very bad people within the Libertarian Party at the highest levels because of the outrage and the action that was taken by, peons like me, right? It's like, and other people that were just like, we're not going to stand for this. You violated the principles. You're out of here. So that's the Mises Caucus. That's the Libertarian Party at front. If there's infighting within every party, right? I will tell you, there is way less corruption. There is way less grift within the Libertarian Party than there is a Republican and Democrat Party. Just size, right? Like, you just can't have that amount of power and grift if you're not in power, right? So, why the Libertarian Party? And how do we go about fixing this? I think people need to understand history first and foremost, and that's why I've really become autistic with my understanding of American history, especially. The anti-federalists were right, and this is going to be a shock or a jolt to a lot of Republicans out there because of what we were indoctrinated with since age 5. And it's not a swipe. It's not meant to be mean-hearted. It's not meant to be anything. But we weren't taught real history. We were taught what the murder cult indoctrination youth camps wanted us to know. That's not the Constitution. It's not your rights. It's not a republic. What they teach is majority rule, and they teach democracy, and they teach anything and everything that empowers them. Now, juxtapose the anti-federalists with the federalists. The federalists were what the anti-federalists called the aristocratic combination. It's where I coined the term murder cult because it didn't go far enough. These guys created a centralized system. First and foremost, you're putting another level of government on top of state and local governments that you really don't need. And they sold it through fear. Like they do with everything else. They divided a people, they sold it through fear, and they talked about the debt, they talked about the Indians, they talked about our debt with other nations and going to war and trade and commerce and all of these things to plant these seeds. And the aristocratic combination is exactly how it sounds. It's the banks, it's the trade industries, it's the government, all in bed together, making sure that at the most elite levels, these guys aren't competing with Joe Schmo on the street who could wipe them out. And so they created this Constitution, and everything that 99.9% of what the anti-federalists said has come to pass. And I mean prophetically. And that's why I teach it. That's why I talk about it on my show. So they also said that the Constitution and the convention that was held for the Constitution was a coup. That is a hard thing for Americans to hear. People were free. We were free in America. I say we. Some people. And I have to correct myself a lot of times, and it's the indoctrination, and sometimes you fall into it. Some people were free, right? That's it.
Yes.
For 10 years. And some states were actually down the road, way further than where the national constitution was taking us in terms of slaves, in terms of, chattel type slavery and everything else that's out there, right? And so they, like places like Rhode Island, they didn't want to join the union, but they were tiny and they were small. And they said, you know what? Force and coercion, you're in no matter what. This is going to get ratified, as long as we get a certain amount of states. So at any rate, the Constitution was a coup. We had 10 years where states were states, and that was it. They fought a awful bloody revolution, and I know they celebrate Constitution Day, but there was a fight back in the day when they wanted to get rid of Independence Day. Like, this was a big, big dust up, and they said, no, we fought for independence. We didn't fight for a constitutional republic. So this idea that we're going to fix a constitutional republic that is sitting on a bad bedrock to begin with of force and coercion is never going to be fixed. What we need to do is decentralize. And I think the key is working with your local sheriffs and working with your local mayors, the executives, to sit there and say, listen, this is what we're going to accept in our community. We're not going to make criminals out of peaceful people, first and foremost. So things like the war on drugs, that shit's over. Like, we're done destroying communities based on plants or mushrooms or whatever the case is. And secondly, if you can work with those guys, you can get rid of things like civil asset forfeiture, policing for profit and things like that, which make your community much safer for not only the police, but also for the people that they interact with on a daily basis. And so if we can,
I want to jump in real quick before
sure.
Before you leave that point, because you brought up a good point. One of the things that we're trying to do over the Conscious Conservative is bring conservative principles, not Republican, but conservative principles to the inner city, and so they can see something different than the progressivism and the big government solutions that have been crushing them so much. And have you seen libertarians or a libertarian designation of how to attack the problems?
Absolutely.
Because Republicans have been saying, "Oh, that district is unwinnable," so y'all not showing up, and y'all don't even want to show up. So I'm like, so what's the libertarian solution to what's going on? Trump says that Baltimore is a shithole, or that, I want to give our state an example since you're going to run as governor. Albany, Georgia. Alicia has been down in Albany, Georgia. She saw the abject poverty, and she's not from Georgia. So she just now seeing it, and we've been here, we know. We stay away from Macon. We stay away from certain parts of Savannah after a certain hour at night. So we know, but she knew, and she was like, this is what's going on in this state. And I'm like, yeah, you see?
I'll tell you right now.
So what is the libertarian solution to that?
The Republican conservatives have a branding problem. First and foremost, you go down into Albany, Georgia, you go into any hood. I don't give a damn if it's here or LA or wherever. I don't care where it is. If y'all go in there talking conservative bullshit, saying I'm a conservative and I'm a Republican, boom, you're getting switched off right now. Right? Like, they're not, like, they don't want to hear that shit. And the thing is what you guys get called. Y'all get called Uncle Toms. You get told how you're acting, outside of your race, you're traitors and everything, house Negroes and everything else. And you're just like, no, that's not what we're actually about. So it's branding. And this is where libertarians actually make giant strides inside of urban areas or in poor areas, because let's face it, I know a lot of times the Black community is sold that like they're the only community that is terrorized by the state or the murder cult. And I get it, probably disproportionately, yes, because just the sheer numbers, when you start talking about urban areas, population density is greater. And a lot of times that population density is people with a lot more melanin in their skin. So the solution to all this is criminal justice reform. All right. And there is a bunch we can talk about. It's not, hey, here are the conservative principles. Here are the solutions. And I don't care if you are Democrat. I don't care if you're Republican. I don't care if you're blue or red or Democrat or an ass or an elephant. Like, I don't care about any of those things. I don't care who you love. I don't care what God you worship. None of those things. We can talk about criminal justice reform in a few different steps. First and foremost, got to get rid of the qualified immunity. Qualified immunity is basically anybody with a badge, anybody acting at the state level says they go out and they commit a crime against a civilian, and those guys walk off most of the time scot-free. And if they do, in a high-profile case, get the book thrown at them and they serve time, it's a fraction of what normal people get. So criminal justice reform, start with qualified immunity. Secondly, cash bail. Cash bail, getting rid of cash bail is like getting rid of the money problem that makes people want to arrest people in the first place. So you get rid of cash bail because, let's face it, rich people don't sit in jail. They don't. And here's the other thing is, if you're actually committing what I consider a real crime, murder, rape, assault, kidnapping, coercion, property damage, vandalism, coercion, theft, it may be trespassing, right? Those are the violent crimes that police should be enforcing. If you're not committing those, you're a peaceful person. Just because somebody doesn't like what you're doing morally, whether it's drugs or whether it's gay or whether it's owning a certain type of firearm with a suppressor or a bump stock, whatever the case is, those people are peaceful people and they need to be left alone. So we're not going to criminalize peaceful people. America today has the highest incarceration rate in the world. We're not the land of the free. And I think most people in urban areas understand that we're not free because we're patrolled like cattle most of the time, right? And if they want to stop us and they want to contact us, they do. Getting rid of civil asset forfeiture, another incentivized, policing for profit, racket that came up during, I want to say it was the 1990s. It's a great read out there. It's called The Rise of the Warrior Cop. And it shows, exactly how much money has been poured into policing for profit and the usurpations, the end around your rights to take your stuff and make it stand trial instead of you. So people, if civil asset forfeiture, if people can take your stuff with badges and it has to prove its innocence and not be found guilty in a court of law, that's an infringement on your Fourth Amendment and your Fifth Amendment, period. Getting police off the streets, having them stay and harbor at places like precincts or firehouses, just like, ambulances and firemen. We don't call people until we need them, right? There's no such thing as proactive policing, for God's sakes. Like, you're going to go out there and, prevent pre-crime. Like, that's a movie. Like, that was a Tom Cruise movie in the 90s called Minority Report. Yeah. And it was one of those things that it freaked people out. But guess what? They're doing it now. So doing those things alone, conservatives drop the conservative branding and go out there and start talking about real damn solutions and explain how they benefit a community. And lastly, like I said, go talk to your sheriff. Your sheriff, he has the power to say, listen, our county, we are not enforcing these laws anymore. Mayors can tell their police departments they're not enforcing those types of laws anymore. And that is the real local power, because you can reach out to those people and you can touch them and you can have conversations with them and you can explain, listen, we just want a safer community, right? Like, this is really, we want you guys to go home to your family. We want to go home to our family. And the way we do that is less combative, interaction and really an understanding of de-escalation, because let's face it, in America, police don't de-escalate anymore. They escalate into the point where you either comply, you're caged or beaten or possibly even dead.
Why do you think the Democrats are becoming so powerful? Is it because they control mainstream media and that's just the only narrative that's being shown? Because I think that even people that lean left in this state would love some of the solutions that you're coming up with right now. And I think a lot of people just feel like, okay, the Republicans are feckless. They've been in charge of Georgia for, I don't know, God knows how long. And then you got the fight with Buckhead wanting to break off from Atlanta. So exactly what how would you use your solutions? How would you reach out to people across? I understand that libertarians seem to glom onto other conservatives because it's like a branch of right-leanism, but how would you reach independents and Democrats with the way that the politics is in this state?
How do I reach Democrats and independents out there? It's all the same message. It's like, look, guys, what we're going to have to agree on is just the basics, right? And like I said earlier, what you need to do is not trust a governor. Don't look to somebody else to fix your life. You got to take some action. You got to get involved. Liberty is a contact sport. If you want to be free, you're going to have to wake up every day. You're going to have to grind your ass off. You're going to have to make, new friendships, new alliances, and you're going to have to look at that other person and be like, look, you're cool. I'm cool. Like, you don't hurt people. You don't take people's stuff. Man, we can agree on these type of things, right? And as a community, like, I think 90% of a community can sit there and go, listen, for everything else that's not don't hurt people and take their stuff, like, we can figure this out locally. We don't need the state. We don't need the feds. We don't need any of these people. Your neighborhood knows you best. Your community knows you best. Your family, your friends, the people that they know, those people know you best. They know where your heart is. They can vouch for you. Or they can say, man, that guy's a piece of trash, right? Like, that guy goes around ripping off anybody he can. He's a scammer. He's hurt people. Like, we know who people are. And if we start acting like adults again and taking responsibility for ourselves and our community without forcing people into, force and coerce type of, interactions, we can do so much more. Like, it's got to be people wanting it. And that's the thing, is we could be free tomorrow. If Georgia wanted to be free tomorrow and give the bird to all of these, sycophant politicians who just want power, all you got to do is stand up. All you got to do is say, hey, no, you're not taking my money anymore. You're not taking my stuff anymore. You're not patrolling this neighborhood, making criminals out of peaceful people anymore. We're not going to stand for it. And the thing is that's the great thing about America. I mean, I travel all over the place, and I just got back from the Middle East after traveling through Europe to get there and back. And I'm going to tell you right now, the rest of the world is suffering right now because they don't have arms. They don't have weapons. At least, here you can sit there and make that stand. You can say, listen, man, we want peace. We're begging you guys, please just lay off of us. We're all essential. We all got to go to work. You at the state and the bureaus, you got to stay out of our places of employment. You're not welcome here. And as a governor, I get to sit there and say, okay, I get to name the head of the state police. And if I find out that there is people in government, in law enforcement, in bureaucracy, in the judicial, in the legislative that are abusing the people of Georgia, we're coming after you. And this is it. And I will take every sheriff, every mayor, every police department chief and say, you need to go after these people. How do we empower people? Tell them what their rights are. Go out there and stand for them, and don't take any shit off of these people anymore. That's all it is. I mean, it's not, government's never going to solve government, right? Like, the faster we learn that, and the faster we start acting like adults and becoming self-sufficient and pushing that into culture, we're going to be so much better off.
I've been to a lot of different some of the smaller areas of Georgia, traveling back and forth. Some of the roads don't connect in here, and so you end up on a back road like, oh my God, where am I at?
I live on one of those.
Yes, and that's a lot of places in Georgia. And a lot of the times, like my husband, he's from Georgia. He's from Thompson, which is a smaller city outside of Augusta. And there's nothing but poverty there. And some people are like, we need jobs. We need things to work for. Like where I'm at right now, the base, we have the Air Force Base. And that is mostly what everybody in this town do. And if that base shut down, then they wouldn't have nothing. And you know why that helps, with the murder cult, because they need to send them planes out. So
Sure.
What would you do to get more, other than like Gulfstream down in Savannah or maybe some stuff up in Atlanta? What would you do to bring jobs to people in these areas? Like we have King Randall working with the boys down at Albany, but in Albany, there's not a lot there. So what would you do to try to bring some capitalism back to Georgia? What would you get rid of the state tax? Like what would you do as a governor to bring jobs back in the area?
There is a great saying within libertarian circles, and I'm sure you're familiar with it: taxation is theft. All of it is theft, right? If I'm forcing you to pay for things that you don't use, I mean, that's a violation of your conscience, and we're taking money from you. That stops, right? We're done. Taxation is theft, and as a guy that will be the governor, I'm not taking a salary. right? You got to live it. You got to live it. I can make a living, doing podcasting and everything else. And if people like having me down there as the executive, I'll earn the living that way. How do you create jobs? You create a steady, stable environment for people to invest in, period. That's the key to economics. Like, money doesn't wait. If you can create a stable place where taxes are low, investments will flow in. We have, the state of Georgia is, our number one industry is agriculture. We have been fighting the agricultural war the way the feds want us to, right? We grow it. They want us to grow. We destroy crops all the time that, we have too many of, and the subsidies and everything else wrecks us. One of the best things we could do is get rid of the laws of prohibition on hemp and things like that, because Georgia could be energy independent within a year. We can grow two bumper crops of hemp in a year, and that hemp can create enough biodiesel to run every engine on Earth for a year. What would farmers do with that kind of stuff? What would industry do with cheap building products, with cheap energy, cheap building products, and no tax? People will be flooding here with their money to sit there and say, listen, this is a stable environment. I get more on my dollar in return. And guess what? Most of the people here are extremely peaceful. I don't have to deal with the bureaucracy. I don't have to deal with the theft. I don't have to deal with the politics of this kind of crap. It's decentralized. Is whatever is going on in this county or this area, it's like, man, let's let these people figure it out. And that's what you do in emergency situations. You make sure that everybody's empowered to their rights. So whatever they think their passion is, wherever they think they can make a dollar, whatever it is, you unleash that person, you unleash their passion, let them grind it out in whatever they love. And I'm telling you, that creates genius, and genius lifts humanity. We see it time and time again through history. And that's all it is. Government, like I said, government's not going to fix this. Government has to get out of the way so the people can get back to work and go out there and do what they need to do to provide for themselves and their family and grow an industry. I mean, that's what this is.
Let's talk about this Georgia voting law now. You heard my interview with, like I said, that I did before, and he was giving a Republican rebuttal. And you hear that what the Democrats are putting in the media saying is suppression. They took away some drop boxes. So the Democrat side is saying there's voter suppression, the Republicans saying there's voter fraud. What are the Libertarians saying is going on with the voting in Georgia, and what is your solution for that?
It's all rigged, and that's it's always been rigged. It's been rigged for the two parties forever. And I think most of the time, most people miss the fact that the Georgia Republicans are actually kind of leftover Dixiecrats or Blue Dog Democrats. They're not really quote unquote Republicans, for God's sakes. I mean, they're all statists. They all believe in making sure that, their buddies and cousins and bubbas and all that kind of stuff have all the projects from the state. So like, let's not kid ourselves. Like, we've got a choice between socialists and Blue Dog Democrats in Georgia. So in terms of voting, we're for ranked choice voting most of the time. And, I don't say that for every the predominant theme with the Libertarian Party. Sorry?
I was just going to say, can you explain a little about ranked choice voting? Because some people have a problem with that after the New York City primary. So can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so ranked choice voting, right now we have a primary system. So if you don't get 50% plus one vote, then you go to a runoff with the two highest percentages in the race, right? It's fixed for the two parties again. Like, you're never going to get a third party. Now, let's say ranked choice voting. What you do is you basically go through and label, whoever's on that ballot, who's your first choice, who's your second choice, who's your third choice. And ballots are tallied, who's got the most first, who's got the most second, who's got the most third. And in a lot of cases, when you start to run those type of scenarios where people aren't scared of, going first, second, third with their voting choices, what you get is a completely different type of outcome. Now, add to that blockchain security. It's 2021. I don't know why we're voting on, basically digital but analog type machines that are connected to the internet and are built by people who have, political persuasions and can be bought. And like it doesn't make any sense to have that type of voting. You could do paper, but again, like I said, it's 2021. If we're gonna vote on things, it should be more of a blockchain style, where people can go in, their vote is insured. You can't go outside of a blockchain because it doesn't work that way. Like, it's just, if you understand how blockchain works, a blockchain ranked choice voting system would be better. And there are still a lot of people out there that says, you know what, if people are voting to take other people's money, it's still theft, right? Like, if it's still democracy, it's still two wolves and a sheep, deciding and arguing about what's for dinner. So at the end of the day, I think in a perfect world, as close as we could get to a voluntary type society. You want privatized police? Great, go fund them. You want to privatize fire department? Great, go fund it. If you think that people in a community who are poor won't be served by cops, I think, in a voluntary type society, I think you're dead wrong. I think people who pay for those want people to be helped out who are in need of, actual either protection or finding a criminal who's done really bad things. But to get back to your ranked choice voting is pretty much the libertarian theme when it comes to voting reform.
Awesome. So what are your take on the Delta variant and COVID and all the authoritarian lockdowns and all that? I have an idea what you're going to say, but I just want your words and not mine. So we have it down in there. But and not just COVID, but just any kind of coerced medical decisions by the state fighting the government, the federal. How do you break that all down?
Yeah, I'll tell you. Well, I'll tell you who's got it extremely wrong is the left, but so does Brian Kemp. So when, and I'm gonna tell you right now, Brian Kemp, when he came out, I think it was like March, what was it, April 1st, March 31st, something like that. And he came out, and I remember his words almost as plain as day. He said, "We're not going to be gathering. Basically, your right to assembly is gone. If you see people in a group of 10 or more, tell them to disperse. And if they don't disperse, call me." Right? Like, that's the threat of force and coercion. That's your First Amendment right. That's your right to gather and associate and everything else under the First Amendment. Absolutely eviscerated it last year. And the Republicans didn't say shit. None of them came out saying, whoa, what are we doing? And that's a big problem. So I guess to get back to your point with COVID and everything else, when tragedy or emergency strikes, people cannot be deprived of their rights. Like, your rights are your rights. They are inalienable to you. You have the right to life, liberty, and property. And anybody that takes those from you without consent is a tyrant, period. So if you're sick, great. Weigh the health risk. And, if you need to stay home, if you are obese or diabetic or you have morbidity issues or anything like that, and you're at risk, fine. You need to make the choice to stay home. While if somebody's young, got a 99.9% chance of surviving COVID, even if contacted, they have the right to work. They have a right to go to their livelihood. They have a right to put food on the table and clothes on their back. They have a right to be free people and to consent and associate whoever they want to associate with, especially in times of emergency. It's all about, those very key principles is how do we do this? Now, is there a Delta variant? There might be. The thing is I think a lot of Americans take things as, whatever the talking heads on the magic glow box on the wall say, right? And when they come out and they say, oh, there's a Delta variant or there's COVID. Well, can COVID tests distinguish between the flu and COVID? Can COVID tests distinguish between the regular COVID and the Delta? Can they distinguish between the Delta plus? No, they can't. No, it's all nonsense. If masks worked, if lockdowns worked, if shots worked, if any of this nonsense over the last year out of Fauci's face and the administration's faces would have worked, we wouldn't be talking about COVID. And if you look at the graphs of areas that are right next to each other that either did follow CDC recommendations or absolutely rejected the CDC recommendations, you would see some type of correlation in those studies, in transmission, in deaths and everything else. And what do you see? There is absolutely nothing in terms of a correlation in where people locked down, where people had mask mandates, where people had the 6 feet social distance, the restaurants, whatever the bureaucratic tyrannical measure was to stop the spread of COVID. Like, that shit never happened. And they're just, what do we got? Where, over the year, it was wear a mask, right? And once we have the shot, life will be back to normal, right? Like, some people take the shot, some people won't take the shot, everything will be back to normal. Then what did it turn into? Oh, you're going to need 2 shots. Oh, you're going to need a booster every damn year. Wear 2 masks. No, it's not 6 feet, it's 3 feet. It's not COVID anymore, it's Delta. And we're going to sit here at, where something with infection diseases has never happened, and we're going to say it's more deadly and it's more contagious? No, it's not. This kind of stuff doesn't happen. And that's why, Psaki up there at the White House, when asked by one of the White House pool reporters for the number of deaths, said, why do you need that? What are you doing? Why are you questioning us? You don't need those numbers. The whole last year, they led with those numbers, right? Like, we've got this many people dead. And it didn't matter if you died from COVID or you got launched out of a car windshield and hit a brick, wall with your head going 1,000,000 miles an hour. You died from COVID. And now they don't want to talk about that shit at all. So I think it's all nonsense. I think people have the right to do whatever the hell they stuff. And you don't have the right to force and coerce anybody in terms of vaccine mandates or, lockdowns or anything else, as a person who is a servant of the people, period.
What's your response to the withdrawal of Afghanistan right now? Do you think that's just BS?
Thank
that's a play
God.
game, or what do you think they really pulling out, or you think they just pulling out to go back? Oh, we about to pop somebody else.
I think they're redeploying to America, right? I think they're redeploying to America. You put all the pieces together, and you're looking at the police on Capitol Hill that, I'm not going to say it was an easy day for those guys, but they were left out to dry. There were people that were not great that day, and they did go inside the Capitol, but most of them stayed within the velvet lines and didn't do a whole hell of a lot of damage. It's not an insurrection. You don't clean up insurrections, in suits. You clean up insurrections with body bags. So the idea that you had police up there calling these people terrorists, man, if one of those guys' trucks had all the guns inside that Capitol blazing, it would have been a completely different story. But what happened? Nothing. None of those guys brought real weapons to mount an insurrection when they had the capability to do it. So I think, September 11th, it might come, might go. We might still be in Afghanistan. We might not. They might be headed back here to protect the DC area. Honestly, that might be what's happening. And the fact that these police officers are testifying with written scripts, 4 of them have, quote unquote, perished from suicide that day. And you're like, man, this stinks to high heaven. Like everything else, it stinks to high heaven coming from the murder cult. And you're like, oh, I don't know. Maybe we are. But yes, is leaving Afghanistan a good thing? Of course it is. Is leaving Iraq a good thing? Our foreign policy has become so perverted and demented over the years, and it's taken class and perverted the warrior class in America. People who want to do good were brought up thinking that this was just a star-spangly, amazing country. The people that want to go out and fight for other people who are being wronged, I mean, like seriously wrong, I hope they wake up and they understand that the enemy is here. It's clear and present danger. The enemy is here. Stop the bitching. Stop the fighting. Come together and unite and say no more. I can meet you with my sheriff. I can meet you with my mayors. I can sit here and say you're not going after his property, because if you can go after his property or his rights or hers, whatever the case, they can come after mine. I hope people can start to see the bigger picture with all of this. But yeah, our foreign policy, I'll tell you, I've thought about, running this campaign as governor for secession and saying the hell with the United States as a whole. Ron DeSantis, hey man, you're kind of a cool guy. If you guys want to, open up trade and do all that kind of stuff, Tennessee, Alabama, you guys are pretty cool. Like, I don't know, like what are we doing? Why do we owe these people any allegiance? I didn't sign a contract with them. I didn't. And I refuse after this past year to sit there and say, oh yeah, take some more of my money. As a conscientious objector to everything that they're doing up there, man, I think it's about time there is a giant tax revolt, and possibly, you go after things like Bitcoin, where you free people to the blockchain and anonymity and consent, and nobody can take that away from them. So I've got a lot of ideas in terms of implementation, but most of it's decentralization and nullification and freeing the people and empowering them to their rights.
Awesome. That sounds great for somebody ready for governor of a state that's fighting right now about everything. What do you think, off the top of your head, since we're about to get up out of here, what do you think the main 2 or 3 issues are in Georgia? And I think most of them you covered, which was the duopoly and the Republicans messing around with the bills. What do you think the main issues are that are affecting actual everyday Georgians like us? And how does libertarianism help that?
We free you. That's the thing is, we empower people to free themselves. We're those dorks, right? We're the nerds that stayed up reading instead of going to parties. And so we've seen history. We've been talking about what's going to happen with the economy. We've been talking about what's going to happen with jobs. We've been talking about what's going to happen with our overseas foreign perverted policy. We've been saying this stuff for 50 years. There's a track record 50 years long where people have been going, guys, this is going to come back and bite you in the ass. So for Georgia, first and foremost, we're done with the COVID tyranny. Done. No mask mandates, no travel passports, none of that kind of stuff. You want to work? Go work your ass off. We're going to leave you alone. You're essential. That's my message to Georgia. You're essential. Now get after it. Go out there and earn it. Nobody's going to give you anything except for charity now. That's it. We're done with the subsidies. We're done with the state taking your money and redirecting it. The next thing is schools, making sure people are going to the schools they want to go to and aren't forced into government indoctrination. We've got to do something. I've got kids. It's one of those things where if I want them to succeed, I got to make sure that the roadblocks are out of their way, that they're not forced and coerced by the next generation of sociopathic, tyrants out there. And I think really, after decentralization and nullification, I think my job is to make sure that if anybody is abused by a system, is to pardon them. If they're a peaceful person as a governor, I think my job is to make sure that most of those people are dealt with by the governor's office, by the state police, by the local sheriffs and the mayors. And if I can take people and remove them from bad situations like being in jail for being a nonviolent criminal, that's my job. Ending the war on drugs, things like that. It's way, way past time that we get back to, some sanity and a base layer of what, freedom is. And here's the thing is, those guys in 1776 and 1787, they had a chance. They had an opportunity to do it right, and they messed it up big time, right? Huge, especially for people with melanated, skin. And we can do better. We can do this the right way for the first time, maybe in all of history. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be perfect, but you're going to be free. You're going to be able to recognize your passion. You're going to be able to grow genius. And then you're going to be able to lift your community and the people around you, because that's what genius does. So that's my pitch.
Awesome. That was great. And I thank you so much for being on another episode of MrsPinky Thoughts. And I know we could sit here and shoot the breeze for a long time, but I'm not going to keep you no much longer. Just do your pluggables, where people can reach you at, where we can find you, when your next campaign, when you're going to start campaigning, so we can, be aware of all of your comings and goings.
Yeah. I would ask you guys, go out there and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and radicalpod.com's got all the links out there. So I run my own podcast. I do this, out of the goodness of my heart. And really what I need people to do is go out there to the Radical Pod clips and and Shane Hazel, where I've got my full length shows. Share it, man. I got a great guy, Jake Green, out there who is chopping this stuff, making it shareable. So whatever platform you're on, I don't care if it's Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or whatever, take that stuff, chop it up. I ran last time without raising a dime. I got 115,000 votes out of it, and that was because of people, right? Like when people want to be free, they'll work, they'll share stuff, and that's that easy for you. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of content on anything and everything under the sun. So I just ask you, go subscribe, share that stuff, and create a discipleship of people who want to be free and start looking past these ridiculous tribal banners that they've given us to hate each other. That's what they want us to do. They don't want us to be together. They don't want us to be united. They don't want us to see each other as people. They want us divided and hate. And so if we can defy that and unite, we got a great chance of providing a better future for tomorrow.
We sure do. Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Miss Pinky Thoughts. And thank you guys for listening and watching the replay. And we'll see you next time.